Hey everyone, I'm James Marcuzzo, your instructor, and I thought I'd make you this video on federalism. So your book goes into the details of federalism, and it's, shallowish, but you all got the gist, I think, fairly well, as long as you were able to explain some of the important elements of federalism. So I wanted to mention a couple of them here and maybe give you some further insight. Right. Our government is separated first by the judicial, legislative, and executive branches. And then that's the federal level. Then there are a series of states below the federal, and each of them is separated into judicial, executive, and legislative, right? So our governments are separated where the branches are separate, and then there are entirely separate structures between the federal and then each of the individual states. This is all done ostensibly to protect individual liberty. How does this do that? Well, separating the branches of government protects individual liberty because you don't have the same group making decisions that would otherwise be considered a conflict of interest. Let me explain. You have parents, and maybe you are a parent, in which case this is even easier to understand. Parents and children have a very tyrannical relationship, right? I have two little ones right here and here, right? They're little monsters, adorable, but monsters. They aren't able to make decisions for themselves. They believe in magic and things that are not true, right? So I am judge, jury, and executioner for them. There is no other way this could function, right? They don't have the agency to make decisions for themselves. My daughter is absolutely just dangerous to herself and others. So I set the rules, legislature. I enforce the rules, executive, and I determine when the rules are broken, judicial. These are the three functions of power that exist universally across any human organization. Now, I like my kids, so, right, even when I am exercising my power arbitrarily or when I'm acting inconsistently, I still love them. I want them to be happy and successful, both in the short term and the long term. So that matters in to how I adjudicate my role. You, as a citizen, have a relationship with your government, I would suggest, should not mirror that of a parent and a child. So you want the government to be separated. And whoever makes the rules is not responsible for determining whether or not you break them. And that should be separate, again, from those who determine how you should be punished. Hopefully this makes sense, right? You don't want your relationship to your government to be similar to the relationship, right, between a parent and a child. You're an adult. Okay, so that's just the branches of government. And if you look into Federalist Papers 47 and 51, which you can do at your own interest, your own behest, those will explain how and why we separate powers. Well, 47 is why and 51 is how. And then we get to federalism, which Federalist 51 specifically addresses. It's good that we have a federal government because there are certain things that need to be centralized. And we know this because we tried something that was decentralized, and that was the Articles of Confederation. That was not effective. There were several problems. You could not get states to fall in line, to have uniform practices. They printed their own money. They had their own weights and measures. They made deals with other foreign nations that might have actually contradicted, right, the interest of a neighboring state. That was a mess. Not to mention you couldn't force them to pay their war debts or get them to pay taxes. I think it was Shays' Rebellion that finally put the coffin nail in that one. So with the Constitutional Convention, the creation of the federal government, they said there needs to be this centralized power. And in addition to that, we'll have these several states that will have some autonomy. Why? Why does it matter that we have states with autonomy? Doesn't that just create more conflict and different rules that maybe don't match up from state to state? Yeah, that's actually true. It does. But again, we're not interested in strictly structure and stability and order. We are also, right, concerned about personal liberty and individual freedom. And so consider, I live in Omaha, Nebraska, right? I work out of Bellevue. And so there are laws that govern my life, and those laws are passed by the legislature, unicameral here in Nebraska, by the governor. Now, you may or may not like your local government. Most people have a love-hate relationship with that. But it's still a government largely of the culture of this place. What am I talking about? Well, consider I don't live in Seattle, Washington, or Portland, Oregon, or San Francisco, California. I mention those because those are three relatively far left-leaning, right, cities, and their laws reflect that cultural sentiment. I think people that live in San Francisco may not want the laws from where I live here in Omaha, Nebraska. I don't want their laws. They can keep them. And this is a big element of federalism's ability to protect individual interest, right, and preference. The people in Idaho, the people in Florida, the people in New York, the people in New Mexico get to vote on laws for them where they live, represented by their own people in their local legislatures. And within reason, they can have unique laws reflect that local culture, so long as they don't violate constitutional protections. And that happened under the 14th Amendment. Prior to the 14th Amendment, individual states had substantial leeway to create their own laws and their own rules. And at one time in our history, for example, states were actually able to have their own state religions. Now, of course, we know that's not the case. It's not the case because the 14th Amendment had an element to it that said all states cannot contradict federal law. They can make other laws outside of what the Constitution says, but you can't contradict the federal government's law. And so the First Amendment says, right, one of the things the First Amendment says is the state shall make no law regarding or establishing religion, amongst other things. And so states also cannot make a law establishing religion. Anyway, these are just some thoughts. Maybe it's helpful. Plus, this course can get a little mundane because it's so self-driven. So here's a face, a real human behind all of it. Maybe we'll talk again soon.